what it do? Luke here. It's almost Halloween. Around every holiday, I like to replay a game that gives off the same vibe I feel with that holiday. And no game fits this idea more than Resident Evil 4. I haven't played this game yet. Wait, then that must mean... When the Nintendo 64 was coming towards the end of its life, Nintendo knew that the next generation of consoles was coming up. So they came up with the idea of the GameCube. This new console will be much more powerful than the N64 and they want their launch titles to show it. So of course when they began to throw eggs at a wall, they thought their launch title would be a Mario game since he's Nintendo's mascot. But then Nintendo thought to themselves, what if we stop showing Mario down everyone's throat and instead let Luigi take some spotlight? And so they did. And that's not the only thing they decided to stray away from the standard. Instead of this game being a platformer, they wanted it to be an action-adventure game taking place in a mansion. This idea would spark 2 more sequels down the line, one of which being arguably the best-looking Nintendo Switch game. So now that they have their location and protagonist, what do they want the feel to be? Since everyone knows that Luigi's the more timid brother, Nintendo thought it'd be funny to torture the man by putting him into a haunted house. Yes, that's right, Luigi's Mansion is a horror game. Kinda. I mean, it isn't scary by any means necessary, but I feel like Nintendo tried to market it as a horror game. I find it really silly that they tried to advertise this game as a horror game for people of all ages. Like, I can see how little kids can get frightened in some parts of this game, but other than that, it's just a fun game that has some obvious horror-like elements. So now that we've covered a little bit about the development process, I think it's time to praise how good this game looks. I know many would think that this game looks ugly in 2020, but remember, this game came out nearly 2 decades ago. For a launch title for a 6th generation console, it looks gorgeous. Years of dust animation has definitely paid off. You heard that right, dust. Dust is everywhere in this game. Almost every time you touch something, dust will fly off that said object. So now that most of the background is already praised for, let's get on to the story. Luigi won a mansion in a contest he never entered. When he gets to the mansion, he finds an old man named Professor Egad. This man informs Luigi that the mansion doesn't actually exist. In fact, it only had first appeared a few days ago. So Luigi never really won a mansion. Unfortunately for Luigi, that is not the only form of bad news. It turns out this house is also haunted with ghosts who have captured his brother Mario, and the one who captured Mario is none other than the King Boo. So like I said earlier, Luigi's the more timid brother, so it seems a bit harsh and unfair that the game he stars in would throw him into a Ghostbusters setting. Quite literally, actually. After Luigi's informed all about this information, he feels the need to save his brother, and he can't do that without Egad's help. So Egad gives Luigi the 2 items he will use in this game. The first item is the weapon you use, the Poltergust 3000. This paranormal vacuum cleaner allows Luigi to capture all the ghosts in the mansion as well as disperse elements throughout the game. These elements include fire, water, and ice. The elemental used for the Poltergust is for either environmental reasons or to attack elemental ghosts. Now the second item given to you by Egad is the Game Boy Horror, a fun little name change of the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Horror can be used as a phone to talk to Egad, as a camera to point out certain objects, a map, or a little description for the portrait ghosts that you've collected so far. Oh yeah, the portrait ghosts. Almost forgot about them. These guys are ghosts who were trapped in portraits but have escaped. Honestly, it feels weird going after them because a lot of them are just minding their own business, not hurting anyone. You just have to believe that it's for the greater good to capture them, I guess. Some feel wrong capturing, like this one ghost, Chauncey, who is just a baby. Of course, he attacks you at some point, but still, he's just a baby. A dead baby, but this is all besides the point of the game. The game is split up into 4 areas. At the end of every area is a little boss. Of course, each area is a little bit more difficult than the last. The first area only has you fight the first 3 portrait ghosts, ending the battles with Chauncey as I mentioned earlier. The boss battle isn't hard, of course, just follow the simple pattern in him 3 times. The second area is really what sets up the groundwork for the rest of the game. In this area, you find an item Mario dropped in the mansion, and then you meet this one ghost who's actually friendly. Her name is Madame Clairvoya, and she is a fortune teller. She gives you little pieces of information about the future with every item you bring her. Luckily for you, Mario left 5 items to bring to her. You also get your first element in this area, which is fire. And probably the biggest thing that happens in this area is that Luigi accidentally unleashes 50 boos onto the house. I hate these guys. Some boos are easily defeatable, but some are just drop dead annoying. They can escape by floating through the walls, and sometimes you will find yourself spending 10 minutes walking between rooms trying to capture a boo that has 300 health. Boos like to hide in the dark, so you can only really capture them when the lights are on in the room, which can be done after you capture all the normal ghosts, and then you have to follow the signals from the Game Boy Horror to find the Boo. At the end of the area, you have to fight this demon-looking dude named Bogmir. I actually really enjoyed this boss fight. It took me a good minute to figure out how to defeat him, but yeah, it didn't really take that long. Also, I love the change in environment. I feel like this whole boss fight was a psychedelic journey. So like I said earlier, there's only 4 areas in this game, and now that we've finished 2, we should be halfway through the game, right? But there's so many more activities that are jam-packed into the 3rd and 4th areas that make the first half of the game feel more like the first quarter of the game. Around this point in the game, I started to realize that the puzzles were becoming more difficult and some of the portrait ghosts were becoming stronger. I also started to realize that the game was becoming more buggy and that there were some parts that should have taken me 3 or 4 minutes that actually lasted around 10. Of course everything was more than doable, but there was definitely some frustration here. Above all else, it felt like it took me forever to get around the mansion. I just wish there was some easier shortcuts. Of course there is one shortcut in the game. If you're near a mirror, you can aim your Game Boy Horror at that mirror and it'll send you back to the main entrance, but that's the only form of fast travel in the game. At the end of the area, you need to fight a big group of Boos, which can form together and create one big Boo. I would say this is my least favorite boss fight just because it felt very repetitive and annoying to constantly grab the big Boo and split it up and then freezing each an individual Boo. It's just annoying to me just thinking about it, so let's just move on. So now we're on to the 4th and final area in the game. Pretty much at the beginning of the area, the mansion's power goes out, which pretty much says all the work you put towards the game up to this point is worthless. I mean, this whole game you've been working to turn on the power. Now that almost every room in the game is lit, just turns off just like that. With the power off once again, the ghosts have flooded the mansion more than ever. Honestly, there's just an absurd amount of ghosts at this point in the game. In case you couldn't already tell, this game is more of the same. It follows the same pattern of enter a room, capture some ghosts, capture a Boo, move on. And this kind of goes for the same for Area 4. So let's just save some time and get to the end. So here we are. Luigi enters the last room in the basement, and before him is King Boo monologuing in front of Mario, who is stuck inside the portrait. And then BAM! Bowser is unleashed. The final battle takes place on the roof of the mansion. This battle is a combination of capturing King Boo and defeating the phantom version of Bowser. And I know I said earlier that this game might be scary for little kids, but if I played this boss fight when I was only 5, I would probably have some nightmares. Now finally, when you beat King Boo and Bowser, you are officially done with the game. Luigi goes back to Egad's lab, but where they bring back Mario into the real world. The process of bringing Mario back is a bit unsettling because it features some torturous cries and pain. But when Luigi sees his brother is back, he begins to cry in joy, easily the most heartwarming part of the game. After that, you learn what the money Luigi has earned throughout his adventure would be put towards a new home Egad would build for him. Wait, are you freaking kidding me? Money had no purpose up to this point in the game, and now I find out that it has used for something. Great. So yeah, that's Luigi's Mansion for you. If you want more of Luigi's Mansion, there's a new Game Plus mode called Hidden Mansion that's supposedly more difficult. But there are 2 more things I'd like to talk about from this game. The first thing that is pretty creepy about this game is that when you stand in a certain spot when the lightning strikes, Luigi's shadow kind of looks like he's hanging itself. This was just shrugged off as a glitch in the game, which is probably true, but that never stopped the community from sparking theories that say foreshadows Luigi's inevitable death in the mansion. And the second thing is the original game over screen. Yeah, now that is terrifying. People claim that this is meant to say that Luigi is stuck in purgatory and is left with depression after failing to save Mario. Yeah, those were pretty much 2 of the most iconic things that have come from Luigi's Mansion. There are actually some genuinely scary ideas and I'm really happy they didn't make it into the final cut of the game. But now with all that out of the way, it's time for me to play a real horror game. I really regret my life decisions.